Now, are you living in Charleston now?
I have been living here since last June, and I am here until the middle of April.
And then,
Well, I've got 2 to 3 months back in Texas, divesting myself of furniture and whatnot, and then I'm moving to France.
wow, where? Where in
Right in the
France?
right in the center of the country, right near Orléans. It's
Oh,
in the Loire Valley area.
parlez-vous le française?
Un petit peu, not well enough, but I have my lessons. I've got my little French book over there, and I've got my Duolingo.
That's a good
So,
program.
so yeah, a big few months coming up. How about you? How are you? How are your TED Talks and all of that
Yeah,
stuff going?
they're
Busy?
going, yes, they're going great. The event will be April 14th. We have 5 international students as well as a half a dozen local student speakers. And we have the California Teacher of the Year, an artist in residence, and a really awesome local singer-songwriter, Kat Ridgway.
Cool.
Yeah,
Another cat.
right? Lots of cats. Meow.
Oh, Miriam, I can't hear you. I don't know. Are you talking to us?
Oh no, I just went
Okay.
meow meow because I always do that when I
Oh,
see cats. I say meow meow. That's how I talk to them. So meow meow. So where did you say you were moving to?
I'm moving to the little village is Beaugency, and it's right in the center of the country, just about in France.
Wow. Delicious. It makes me think of delicious food.
Delicious cheese and bread and wine, and
Mhm.
oof, I have to budget myself. It's bad. It can do
Mhm.
real damage.
Where are you now? Are you in France now?
No, I'm in Charleston.
Oh, wow. Okay. So this is a big shift.
Yes, ma'am. It's a bungee jump. I call it my bungee jump.
Well, the great thing about Obvio is that we can use it from anywhere, right?
I know.
Hmm.
Did you connect with
Virtual
did you connect with the leaper who was from France in the
and
last code?
yeah, and Follette. Yes, we've
No, a guy. He um he was in my pod briefly. Uh
I
yeah.
think he's from France, but I think he lives in Spain.
Okay, right.
I think he lives in Spain. I haven't seen him in a while. Hmm. No, but I'm telling Blue and Barry I'll be there, like, European contact for Europe leapers.
So what time will you start trainings? If they start at 11, you'll have to
It's
go
7 hours. Well, 6 hours from Eastern. So that would be 5 p.m.
So it will start then and it will go for 8 hours. Late nights.
Yes. And I've been over there a few times on some of these calls and it's kind of tough, but it's worth it.
Linnell, I love your title. Chief cheerleader. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I was just fooling around with it, trying to set this camera up because it has the little logo thing and I never changed it and I get such good feedback. I'm gonna leave it.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, hello. Hey, I have a question because I'm new to LEAP, and I didn't understand when they said that we could come to the studio. When could we do that? And is that like only on certain occasions? Does anybody know the
I,
answer to that? I'm sorry.
I
During the
think,
trainings.
yeah, she was talking about the trainings, like the milestones.
Is that what it is? Like, because I
Yeah,
didn't know if it was the milestones or
Mm-mm.
or
It's
um.
the
once a
milestones
month.
the milestones are once a month and you can come and sit and participate and sit in the studio. It's just like the one day. And then when they have TVE, and there's Blue, he can like correct me if I'm wrong, but when TVEs are going on, then you can come, but there's an entrance cost, but you get to take the credit on your renewal for LEAP. But the
What
milestones
does
are
that
just,
mean?
that means if you want to come for the TVEs, you can come in. There's a day ahead of time. That's
Yeah.
a one day.
Why don't I answer that
Good work.
for you?
It makes
Yes,
sense.
I'm like rambling. Please take over
Okay.
from Blue.
Sorry. Thank you,
Yeah.
Lynette.
So,
Thank you.
yeah. And actually, you know what? If you have a question about TVE in person, why don't you reach out to leap at poweredbysage.com? Because I know not everybody on this call is a Leap member. And I want to make sure that we're fair to the Obvio subscribers who have questions. But good to have everybody here. What's up, Grant? How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. It's good to see you.
Sweet.
You were saying, not everyone on here is a Leap member, but the vast majority are. As I was just looking down the list of people, but yes,
Totally.
there are a couple of people that are Obvio subscribers, and the key the key reason we have these meetings is to ask questions about Obvio. So you would have seen on the dashboard an ask a question button. And so you can ask any question you like about Obvio, whether it's very basic questions or you might think of it as very advanced questions. These calls don't build on each other, okay, and so they're a fresh start every week. So you could ask the same question every week if you still are not getting it, and we'll find a new way to answer it. So, someone's you laughing already, Blue?
That's funny.
We'll find a new way
Yeah,
to
that was
answer it.
funny.
Well,
Yeah,
as
that was
in,
funny.
it's possibly our problem. I've got a question I want to that actually is from Tony. Hey, Tony, I did see your question that came through on Facebook, and I was hoping that Blue was here today because you'd be able to answer it clearly. And that's the challenge to Blue that we don't seem to have a direct integration with ClickFunnels. Explain.
Um, Well, I will say to you that ClickFunnels, the ClickFunnels, I think they're calling it ClickFunnels Classic. Is that what they're calling it? The original version of ClickFunnels um, doesn't have inbound integration with much. And also, most people, there are very, 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 very few people who use ClickFunnels to email. And that's where the integration really comes in. So if you want to use ClickFunnels, what most, if I were to say to you that 95% of people who use ClickFunnels Classic and Obvio, what they're doing is they are selling on ClickFunnels. Then they have an attendee, like they have their event on Obvio, but how they're communicating is through another platform like Keep or ActiveCampaign or HubSpot or something like that. So most people who are using ClickFunnels Classic are covered by one of the other integrations. In terms of ClickFunnels 2.0, currently, the ClickFunnels team is, I think we could probably say they are in active development of ClickFunnels 2.0, and they just announced their API at the last Funnel Hacking Live. And as of right now, there are still a couple of pieces of their API that we would need in order to integrate with ClickFunnels 2.0 that are missing. So right now, the best way to integrate with ClickFunnels, whether it's 1.0 or 2.0, or ClickFunnels Original or whatever they're calling it, and ClickFunnels 2 is to use Zapier. So that's unfortunately the best way to do it.
Cool.
And it still works. It works great. It's just, that's how it works.
Oh, wow.
Great.
That's interesting.
We've got a couple of questions that people are posting on the dashboard now. Ask a question. Linnell, did you have something related to that one?
No, I'll go and put it on the proper channel. I'll lower my
great.
hand.
Awesome. No worries. Thank you. All right. So, actually, Blue, did you have any sort of updates you wanted to talk about? In fact, actually, there was Miriam's question. Will be a softball for that, and that was, what was the service that you were going to be adding in March?
Yeah, so we are a little bit behind on development of it, but the service that we're adding is the system that we call Marketplace, which is the ability to build a sales page and also to sell tickets. There's a couple of things that we're working on to make that platform or that system a little bit better and easier to use, that are just giving us a little bit of headaches. So it's being held off right now. I'm hoping to have it released by mid-March, but I think if we were all being honest, if I was being honest with myself, I would probably say to you that we're on pace for March 31st. So I'm still aiming for March, but it's probably not going to be at the beginning.
Fair enough. Anything else you wanted to talk about? Not really.
No, not really. No, I don't have anything of significance to share from a new features perspective yet.
Okay.
But I'll say the next couple of weeks should be interesting.
Okay. Christine has a question. Can I go ahead and cancel our current Zoom subscription? It's one question. What webcam? It was like in one sentence there, as if those two things are related. Canceling your current Zoom subscription, and what webcam would you recommend us use? Let's just talk about how Obvio includes a Zoom license. Now, it really depends on your business structure as to whether you might still need a Zoom subscription, and so we wouldn't necessarily say go ahead and cancel your Zoom subscription, so that you can continue doing just business meetings, right? I mean, we're regularly in meetings every day that we don't necessarily need to be going into Obvio. Having said that, some people have been very creative in how they use Obvio to use Zoom and to do some one-on-one meetings or one to few meetings using Obvio, and they really like that experience for the business that they're running. And so it's possible that you might be able to, depending on how you're using Zoom, but that will be a business decision for you as to whether you can manage, and you might be using something else, dare I say Teams or Google Chat thing. So have a think about that. From a webcam point of view, it can change from month to month what our favorite ones are. A consistent one for some time now has been the Insta360 link. Muddy, can you talk to that a little bit? He's done a good little review of that camera.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. And when we think about, and Blue's holding one up right now, actually, when we think about, we think about webcams, usually think about the first class of webcams being simple USB webcams, just kind of plug and play. And the Insta360 link is going to be one of the higher quality versions of that. So this is before you're getting into, a DSLR or mirrorless camera or anything kind of more professional like that. This is still a simple USB webcam. However, what the Insta360 link provides is a PTZ, or pan tilt zoom. It allows the camera can kind of move and reframe, can zoom in. It even has a tracking mode, although to be honest, I don't often use the tracking mode, but for those that move around as you teach, it could follow you around. What's nice though is it also has some different presets. So if you have a whiteboard or a flip chart that you go to, you can push a button or a shortcut and it will kind of reframe and zoom to that spot. And then you could push another button and it'll come back. So I found it to be a very good, and as Blue is showing, it's a kind of a nice small little form factor that's easy to use and has been very reliable in my experience. And I did recently do a review video that I'll drop the link in here for those that want to see what it looks like in real life.
Nice work. Blue's having a little moment with that camera. Hey, you're just enjoying it.
I do love that little thing. That little guy is really cute, Yeah,
it is. That is our favorite. My brother was asking me just yesterday what camera to get, and I said, this is the camera. He's like, I want to spend that much money. So it's always a hard thing, right? I think, how much are you willing to spend for each meeting? We talk about how important the way that you show up in these meetings is so key. In business meetings, at events, when you get your sound right, you get your video right, then it changes the authority that you have in a meeting. It really does. So when it looks like you've just thrown your laptop open, because you probably have, and you're looking at the ceiling and the sound's all echoey and things like that, it's equivalent to showing up in sweatpants to a meeting rather than in proper business attire. So it's worth thinking about. It's a good investment, and we always say buy once, cry once. So cry once about the price that you're paying for, and then be happy that you got the right equipment for some time. So we've got a couple of questions. We had some heavy activity on Facebook, in the Facebook group this week. So much so that I even did that little bonus Q&A, and just a few people were saying, oh, I missed it. And really all that was someone really needed some help right there and then. And instead of me just doing a one-on-one support call, I happened to have the availability at the time. I just opened it up, and we had a half a dozen people come in. We answered a few questions. they got to see the help that I was able to offer for Amanda, and it was kind of a win-win. But it was certainly not a like, oh no, you've missed out on something amazing. That was just a little, it happened, and you might see that happen from time to time. I would much prefer to share a support call like that than just to do a private one-on-one. It just is a better use of time. So we also had another question that came. Let me get this going. There's a couple of questions. I'm going to fire them at you, Blue. These are kind of good starting off questions. Do I add myself as an attendee?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the short answer to that is you don't have to, but we usually do. And here's the reason why. Inside of the Obvio dashboard builder, like when you're editing your dashboard, there's a little toggle up at the top right-hand side that allows you to preview what it's going to look like as an attendee. But it's not a fully functional version of the dashboard. It's just showing you a representation of exactly what it's going to look like. If you try to click on some of the buttons, or if you try and click on different links that link to other pages, oftentimes those things don't actually work. So, and that's because you're just in preview mode. You're still in the editor. So the easiest way to see exactly what the client experience, what the attendee experience is going to be like, is to actually add yourself as an attendee and then log in to the dashboard as that attendee.
Nice. Along those lines, do I add speakers as an attendee?
I would say most speakers don't show up for events. Yeah. For those of you who have hosted in-person events in the past, and if you've ever hired a guest speaker, oftentimes what happens is the guest speaker shows up 10 minutes before they're supposed to go on stage. They go on stage, they do their thing, then they come off stage and they leave. Now, some guest speakers will stay for a little bit longer on the front and on the back, but rarely do they stay for much longer than that. Beyond that, speakers generally don't then get off stage and go sit down in the audience, right? So what you're doing if you add your speaker to the dashboard is kind of giving them an audience ticket, like an audience participation seat. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to do that, if your speakers want that, I would say go for it. But I will say for us, when we have a guest speaker, we don't.
Okay. Then is there a green room for speakers where they can listen in but not be in the same room as participants until I'm ready to have them on?
Yeah. So, this is a question that starts to delve into studio technology, because when it comes to Obvio and Zoom meetings, there's two things that you have to consider. One is, how are your attendees going to get into Zoom, right? And we've got that covered. Obvio takes care of that for you. You build a dashboard, you import your attendees, you give them the link, they come straight in. The other thing that you have to consider is, how are you going to get into Zoom? How's your video feed, right? The video feed that I'm looking at right now, how's that going to get into Zoom? And then you have some of these other considerations, like how are you going to bring your speakers in? And you can do something where you can open up a second Zoom room. And if you have the capabilities with your setup to send a second video feed to that computer and allow your speakers to view what's taking place, you can do that. We have that capability here at our studio in Charleston. I know, Grant has that same capability at his studio, as does Muddy. And really what it boils down to is just having a little extra hardware, a little extra devices and signals that allow you to essentially do that. And oftentimes, we actually have speakers speak from that green room, which gets a little bit more complicated still. But the advantage for that is we rarely will put a speaker into general population, if you will, right? Mostly because we don't want that speaker to all of a sudden get a ton of text messages or chat messages, which will wind up happening if you have a more influential speaker. So those are the reasons why. The how is, there's a little bit more to it than what we can probably cover in this specific moment.
Yeah, we like to keep them at A block. We don't want to put them in general pop. That could be a bit scary.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, exactly.
I think of it as part of team. Like when you're at a position where you can build out your sort of your production team, then you can start doing a bunch of those tricks with having green rooms and moving people around and a bit more fancy stuff with multiple rooms. And that's the thing we think about with Obvio. As you know, it scales to large numbers of attendees, which requires multiple Zoom meetings. And when you do that, you really do need to have a team, a production team that's connecting all those meetings together. And so it's a good way of thinking about what the next hurdle is for you as you run your events. If you're starting off smaller and you're a single person team, then ideally you extend very quickly to having someone else who's in Zoom with you, and you're kind of leaning on them. And then you start, as the more attendees, then you start building out that team more. And at some point, there'll be a big jump to having multiple Zoom meetings, speaker green rooms, multiple attendee Zooms. And that's when it gets a bit more complicated. And that's when you could go and talk to someone like Muddy, who can make all that happen for you. So, as an example. There was another question about, these are all Mary's questions, these are great questions you think of when you're getting started. What are the dimensions for the header background, dashboard background, logo, etc.?
Yeah, so any dimensions that we give you are just a kind of best practices-ish. Dimensions for images on websites that are dynamic or mobile responsive are kind of an illusion, because the image will change how it's displayed and how much of it is displayed based on the size of the monitor, of the screen that's looking at it, right? So if I look at a dashboard on my phone or an iPad or a 13-inch laptop or a 16-inch laptop or a Mac Mini with a 36-inch display on it, it's going to look different on every single one of those monitors. So as a result, we give you some guidelines for what we would recommend as a good starting point. But something that I would say to you is, don't force yourself to have to use those resolutions. You can play around with it and tweak it and see what works best for you on your monitor. But then don't forget that just because something looks great on your monitor doesn't mean it's going to look great on every monitor. You want to try and look at your dashboards. And this is not just an Obvio thing. This is, if you're building a sales page on ClickFunnels, you'd want to do this as well. Look and see what it looks like on different devices, because it's going to be different. So how's that for not really answering the question, Grant?
Well,
How'd I
yeah.
do?
And that's what I say all the time as well, is that actually often it comes down to the aspect ratio more so than the size or the dimensions. But can you speak briefly, Blue, about layering, like putting the logo on top and the background, and how that can be advantageous?
Sure. So here, let me show you. This is the basics of the dashboard that you guys all came in through. If I click preview, this is essentially what it looks like. And this header image is, if I go into the gear for the header, you'll see actually the image itself is probably a 19, actually, I don't know what that looks like, a 4:3 image. So I'm not sure exactly what the resolution of it is. But the header itself is only showing the middle section of it, right? But I'm okay with that because that's kind of how that picture is designed. I can also pop over here and change my header height, right? So now if I wanted my header to be really large, I'm seeing more of that exact same image. And how big your image needs to be changes based on how big your header height is. And that's a setting for this particular dashboard, for this particular template, which is the classic template. That's a setting that you can adjust inside of inside of the settings for the header. Now, what Grant was referring to was the fact that this logo, the Obvio logo, is a separate image, right? So it's not on the header background; it's its own logo file. And the advantage of that is it allows you to adjust both the header height and the logo size independently. So, if I wanted to have a larger header but have a really small logo, I could do that, or I could adjust it quite simply just like that. So now the header of this dashboard is much bigger, and the logo itself is bigger as well. And there's a lot of instances throughout the platform on the various templates where the logo and the background are independent of each other because of that, right? Because we want to make it easier for you to make changes on the fly.
Very good. So the next question from Mary, I think this is the last one, is about recordings. How do I access the Zoom recordings, and how do I share them? I think I've got. You got it? Take it away.
Sure. So still in this event, if you go into Zoom areas and you go to the main stage, which is where we are right now, and once you're there, you click on the number 1. You'll see there's 45 people in here. I think that's the same number of participants we have here.
I was going to suggest.
You'll then.
Do you want to go to
see?
This has got huge. This will take a long time to load because this has got.
Oh, I'm sure it does. Yeah,
hundreds of videos.
Anyway, so then you click on recordings, and once you do, depending on how big your event is, that page loads fairly quickly most of the time. This particular event has been going on since, I think, April of 22. So it has, quite a few recordings in it. But essentially, that's where you can access your recordings. And they show up like this. And for each recording that you have, it'll give you the date of the recording. And you can just click download to download the speaker view, or you can click on the down arrow and you'll see a series of other options for you to be able to download. So inside of Obvio's Zoom account, we record screen share with speaker view, the active speaker, shared screen with gallery view, shared screen, gallery view only, audio transcript, and my personal favorite, which I go back to all the time, is chat files. So we also record the chat. So those are the things that you have access to. Now, keep in mind, when you go to look at your recordings for Zoom, you may not see all of those. As an example, if you don't share screen inside of Zoom for your meeting, then you won't see the recordings that include screen share because you didn't do that. If you just go in for a moment to do some testing and you don't talk, you won't have an audio transcript. If you don't put anything in the chat, you won't see anything for chat recordings. So what you'll see is what's available based on what actually took place in your meeting.
So Kat's got a couple of questions just about onboarding attendees, and I think part of it was seeing how we were doing it on this event and how we were getting people in here, and also just saying, does enabling attendees have to be done the day of? Which it doesn't, but how we get attendees in, and I think particularly how we're using the sign up.
Okay. So one of the things that you have to be aware of when you're building your Obvio dashboard, especially given the fact that right now you can't sell your tickets on the platform, right? You sell your tickets somewhere else, whether it's on ClickFunnels or Infusionsoft or some other platform where you sell tickets. And then you connect Obvio to that platform to import those attendees. Or quite simply, you can just upload a list of attendees to your Obvio account. Now, once you've done that, you now email out your attendees their magic link, their magic URL. And the easiest way to do that is simply through the communication system that's built into Obvio. However, if you are syncing your attendee list with a third-party CRM, we can also store that login URL in that third-party software, and you can email your magic links to your attendees from your own software. So we natively integrate with, I believe it's 6 or 7 different platforms. So you can connect your Obvio events to MailChimp, to Keep, to HubSpot, ActiveCampaign, Ontraport, ConvertKit, and High Level. So 7 different native platforms. And then if you don't use one of those platforms for your communication, for your emailing of your list, we also have Zapier native Zapier integration. So you can use Zapier to connect to your whatever CRM you're using. So that's the first part. The second part is starting to think about what the experience is that your attendees are going to have once they click on the magic link for the first time. And if we go, I'm actually going to use the virtual event on virtual events as an example for this one, because I think many of you actually just recently came to it. So you went through the attendee onboarding experience. So first thing, if I open up the virtual event on virtual events inside of my Obvio account, there is an area on the left-hand side called check-in. And inside of check-in, there are 3 steps or 3 options: password, waiver, and tech check. And you'll see, or you may remember, or you may not remember having seen the password step when you logged into the virtual event on virtual events for the first time. And that's because we actually had it disabled. We did not use the native password feature for our Obvio dashboards. Let me tell you why. The reason we didn't use the password feature is because we sent the magic link to our attendees every time we sent them any communication. The magic link bypasses the need to log in, which is super convenient, right? Because you just click and you're logged in. Nice thing about that for our attendees, you don't have to remember what email address you registered with, for those of you who may or may not have multiple email addresses. And you also don't have to remember which password you used. If you have multiple passwords that you kind of rotate through, or, you just don't have to remember that stuff. So we tend to use the magic link rather than having people create a password. However, that is an option. So that's the first thing that you need to consider. Do you want your event attendees to have to create a password for them to be able to log in? So again, you can enable or disable that. The second step is a waiver step. And again, this is all three of these steps are optional. You can turn them all on, you can turn them all off, or you can have any combination thereof. So for those of you that came to TVE, you may remember a page that looked kind of like this. Step 1, because we had the password step turned off, so we called it step 1. How much money are you currently generating in your business? Which of the following best describes you? What's your phone number? A media release and earnings disclaimer that basically said, we're going to teach you really, really cool stuff, but it's up to you to actually implement it and create the results that you want. Then you had a little checkbox and you had to sign like you would on DocuSign or something along those lines. So this is the waiver step. And again, you have to decide if you want your attendees to, 1, either have an intake questionnaire, or 2, have a waiver. Because you can actually have the signature not required, right? Signature turned off, but the form enabled, and have this, what is called the waiver step, be used as simply an intake questionnaire. And I know a lot of people who host in-person events and now virtual events like to know a little bit about who their attendees are. So it's not uncommon for our users to actually use the waiver step with just the questions, just the form, and get some key information about their attendees. The next step is the tech check step. And if you are going to be doing tech check, having individuals actually welcome people to your event, this is where you would enable that, point it to the correct area, and this is what your attendees would see, right? In our case, step 2, complete my check-in, and now they go through that process. So for you guys, as you're thinking about your event, you have to think about what you want the onboarding experience to be. And I will tell you that for me, when we are hosting events on our platform, I think of events in 2 different ways. Number 1, I think of our intake events or our free events. And then number 2, I think of our paid events or our enrollment events or fulfillment events. Enrollment events, I think, are like TVE, like I'm hosting this thing where I would like you to learn a whole bunch of cool stuff, and we would like to enroll you into Leap. Fulfillment events, for those of you who are in Leap, are, we have a dashboard for Leap. That one, when you logged into, you actually had to create a password, because now you have a username and password for your Leap dashboard, because that dashboard is going to exist for the year. It's not just for 3 days. That's why there's a username and password that we do enable for that one. And then the free event is like webinars, challenges, launches, live masterclasses, summits, things like that. And for me, the thing that I try to think about is for those free events, I want there to be as little friction as possible, right? I want people to get into the event as quickly and easily as possible. So I will tell you, when we do a free event, when we do a webinar or a challenge or a masterclass or a summit on the platform, we turn off all of those steps. We turn off password, we turn off waiver, and we turn off tech check. So when somebody clicks on the waiver or on their magic link for the first time, they're not presented with any of those options. They simply get the dashboard, click a button, and they're in Zoom. So it's fast and easy and frictionless. Now, when it comes to a paid event, like the virtual event on virtual events, people have already committed to coming. So I'm a little less concerned. I still want them to have an easy experience, right? I don't want to, creating friction doesn't mean bad. It just means different. So in our case, for the virtual event on virtual events, I do want to know a little bit of information about you. Number 2, I do want you to sign a media release and earnings disclaimer. So I turn on step 2, or the waiver step. And then the next thing, I do want you to have a conversation with a member of our team welcoming you to the event. And we've talked about why. If you were at the virtual event on virtual events, I actually talked about it in the last session. Doing that in-person tech check really differentiates your event from a live stream or just a webinar, right? Because all of a sudden now, having a conversation with a real person before I even joined an event. You don't go to a lot of live streams or attend a lot of webinars where that happens. So there's the differentiation piece, which should have your attendees kind of sit forward a little bit and go, oh, this is a little bit different. This is going to be a different experience. Okay, I'm ready. Let's go. So we turn those two steps on for those type of events. Now for fulfillment events like Leap, we turn on the password step because I want you to be able to log into the dashboard whenever you want to log into the dashboard. But we don't turn on the waiver step or the tech check step. We don't turn on the waiver step because you've already signed one when you enrolled in Leap. So you've already agreed to terms of service. I don't need to bog you down with more legalese stuff. And we don't do the tech check step for that because you've already gone through tech check. I know you've already attended the virtual event on virtual events, so you know what the platform looks like. So we don't need to introduce you to this dashboard experience. So for Leap, for our fulfillment events, I turn on the password step, but I turn the other two steps off. So that's, from an attendee onboarding experience, that's how I think about our platform. It was these three check-in steps were designed by us, all the way back in 2020 when we did our first virtual event, because we wanted to look at an in-person event experience and see how can we translate that to virtual. And most of those things, you may not create a password at a virtual or at an in-person event, although these days, if you have an app, you probably do. But most of these things are things that you would recognize if you go to an in-person event. So hopefully that helped.
That was very helpful. I just want to clarify a couple of things. So if I understand right, for a free event, for a small event, no need to have a password, correct? Did I understand that correctly? But the waiver you're recommending.
Yeah, so what we do for a free event, I don't do tech check, I don't do waiver, and I don't do password. We turn all three of those things off.
Oh, all three.
Because here's what happens for free events, right? Somebody signs up for a free event, and to sign up for the free event, all they had to do was give us their first name, last name, and email address, right? Again, low friction because I want people to say yes to showing up. Now, if all of a sudden they click on the link to show up and I'm asking them to sign a waiver and I'm asking them a bunch of questions and then I'm having them have a conversation with somebody, like they have zero commitment and have no idea who I am. So the moment it starts to get, feel like a little bit difficult or a little invasive or a little bit, I just signed up for a free webinar. Why am I signing a waiver? Like what is that? Right? Now, all of us, if the moment we do things like that, people start to pull back. And number one, the worst case scenario, don't attend at all. Or number two, go through this process and are kind of questioning life as they come into the event, right? It's like walking into a car dealership and having three people swarm you right away. Can I help you? What would you like to know? Blah, 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 blah. Like, okay, whoa, easy. I just want to take a look at the new X5. That's it. Just let me go walk over to the car that's over there. Talk to me later. Right? So it's kind of the same thing. You have to think about what you want that experience to be, so that you can make it the best for the specific scenario that you have. And, I just told you what my best practices are. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's the end all and be all, although we do quite a few of these.
Just a few. So the magic link that you're referencing, that's the tiny little thing that says obvi.io and then the name of our event.
That's the URL for your event. The magic link that I'm referencing is the individual links that attendees get, that are generated by the platform. So go ahead.
I was just wondering, what's the difference between the two that show up for each attendee?
Sure. So the one that shows up for each attendee, if you look at it, has a whole bunch of other stuff on it, right? So I'll copy an example of a magic link into the chat. Here, let me just put it to everyone. All right, so that's a magic link. The link that if I were to just send you to the dashboard without the magic, it looks like that.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the two different links. The magic link, essentially that token at the end of that URL is unique for each individual attendee.
Mm-hmm.
And allows the attendee to click on that link and be automatically logged into the dashboard as them. Now, Kat, some people don't have the ability to send magic links to their attendees. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have the ability to send a magic link to your attendees, there's a feature inside the platform called an event password. Okay. Now, it's on the settings page. So if I were to go here, you'll notice that for here, I'm actually going to change it because it wasn't accurate. So for TVE 7, we had this kind of backup password that would have looked like this, TVE 7 2024. It has to be an 8-character password. And it's on the settings page of your event.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when somebody goes to tve.obv.io, they get a login URL, right? Like an email address and password. Now, when they click on a magic link, they bypass this. But if you don't have the ability to send them a magic link, you would give them the URL and the event password. So if I type in TVE7 2024 and click log in, it's going to log me in to the dashboard because I just used the default password. So for some, that's why we have that default password as an option. If sending out the magic links to your individual attendees is not something that you're technically able to do, then you can simply use the gmca10.obv.io and say, please log in with the email address that you registered for this event with and the password, blah, 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 blah. Now, if it's a free event, I'm going to give you a couple more things. This can get a little bit tricky and a little bit complicated, so I apologize. But it's simply because there's a lot of options inside this platform, and sometimes options are bad, and sometimes they're good. But they can definitely make things a little confusing. So when we use a magic or just a login URL, I will oftentimes do something like this. Please log in using the email address you registered for this event with and the password TVE7 2024. Now, in the case of TVE, I probably would not have done this, right? Because TVE is a paid event. But if it's a free event, then I feel really comfortable just putting the password right on the page, right on the login page, so that when people show up, if they forget what the password is that you sent them, you can at least give it to them right there. And then they have to hopefully remember what email address they registered with and click login. Does that help?
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome. For those of you who are using one of the platforms that I mentioned, one of those 7 platforms, either MailChimp, Keep, HubSpot, ActiveCampaign, Entreport, ConvertKit, or High Level or Go High Level, or in the case of High Level, any one of the white labeled versions of High Level, you can really easily, with not a whole lot of friction, not a whole lot of effort, connect your event to your CRM, and you can easily import your attendees and pull your login URLs, the magic links, back into the contact record of your attendees in your CRM. So you can then email your attendees their magic links. That's essentially how it happens. So hopefully that helps.
And you can see this has been an iteration of slightly different options that we've added along the way. And so some of these things overlap, you know, some of that you could use some of these different features to achieve a similar thing, but they all have slightly different ways, and it depends. A big one is depending on whether it's free or paid events, and how you want people to sign up and what that flow is, what your attendee flow.
And I'll tell you, we're actually in the process of thinking through adding a new option for the login page. And that is to simply have an email address only required. And this wouldn't be the default, but it'd be something that you could do. So if you wanted to send out just the link, GMC, or in my case, tve7.obv.io, and say, go ahead and here's your link to log in. And when they get to that page, all it would ask them for is their email address. Now, the email address has to be in your attendees, right? So it would still have to match up, but we would be eliminating the need for a password, because sometimes that password can cause a little bit of friction. And again, we're looking for ways to keep it secure while still making it easy to get into the platform. So yeah, that's something that we've been thinking through. And I'm sure you'll probably see that make its way to the platform within the next couple months.
Yeah. Anywhere, I mean, everyone hates passwords. Everywhere we can remove passwords is a good thing, you know. And so, a question from the Blatmobile. we can see that they were just asking about whether to send those links from the broadcast section of Obvio or to use their CRM.
You know, I think that is up to, I would test it. If you use a CRM that is compatible with Obvio, and you email your list regularly, I usually recommend emailing people from the platform that you normally email your people from, because of the way email works, and because of the way spam filters work, and because of the way like trusted sources work and all sorts of different things, if you already email people from this one source all the time, let's say you use MailChimp, then when it comes time to send out an email to your event, in an ideal world, you send it from the same place you normally send emails from. Now, with that being said, if you don't send out emails all the time, and maybe this is a one-off idea that you had, or whatever, there is the broadcaster, and I use it all the time. We use it for our own events, and we also use it for client events every once in a while. But I would test it, see which works better for you, which winds up with more people showing up. Test it. Both are really good options, but generally speaking, usually if you are already sending emails, that's the place where you want to send them from, because your audience is used to that.
Yeah, and the CRM is tracking a whole bunch of things for you, right, across multiple events. And so you're able then to go back and see the journey that someone's been on across multiple events, and if they attended this one and they didn't attend this one because you sent them this link and sent them this email. So we're not trying to compete with CRMs. There's a real need for it, and as you grow and have multiple events, it's likely that you need a CRM because you want to manage your list somewhere, and you're going to want to communicate with them outside of an event. Whereas our system is specifically for sending an email related to an event. It's not used for marketing. It's not used for in between. It's just to get people, to announce the event, as in order to get that the login links for them to access that. So it probably is your first smaller events you want to use it in Obvio, and at some point you're going to move into a CRM and start managing it all there. So there was, so Muddy had said, I wonder if you want to walk through the very minimum things needed for an Obvio event, as in a single area and a dashboard button. And related to that was Martin saying about what the difference is between an area and a room in Obvio.
Yeah. Okay. So areas and rooms are similar, at least on the surface, but serve a very specific purpose. So again, I'm still in this TVE event, so we'll take a look at this one. And if I go into Zoom areas, you have main stage, I've got help desk, I've got the tech check, I have my speaker lines, the lobby, welcome celebration, and all access. And each one of those areas were pointed to from a button at some point on the dashboard, right? So welcome celebration was pointed to join area, welcome celebration. And, I'd like to talk to a program advisor was pointed to the lobby. And then, in addition to that, at some point we had a main stage button on here, which we don't, oh no, we do, it's right over here. We had this main stage button and that was pointed at the main stage. So areas are destinations for buttons and destinations for attendees. Now, you create your areas over here under Zoom areas. And I'm going to use help desk as an example. And inside of help desk, you have rooms. So I've got one room down here. Now, think of a Zoom room as a Zoom meeting. And the reason there's two, right? The reason you have an area and a room is because as an event host, you probably want to open up Zoom and get things ready before you let your attendees in. Now, Zoom has this feature that's built into the platform called the waiting room, but I've always not really loved that particular experience. So what we built with Obvio is when an area is offline or toggled to the left, and an attendee clicks on a button that is pointed at this area, they're going to get an offline page. And that offline page can be customized. So this is an offline page. Help desk is currently closed. Have an urgent question, you can reach out to our team at events@poweredbysage.com to get your questions answered, right? And it stays in line, it stays with the branding of the event. I'm not sending them into Zoom yet or anything along those lines. And that's because the area, well, and in this case, the room itself, are both closed. So when you're starting up your event, you would come in, you would open up a room and click start. What that's going to do is that's going to pop open Zoom and it's going to put you in Zoom as the host of the meeting. You don't get a Zoom login. You don't need to log into Zoom. You actually go into Zoom as the host of the meeting from Obvio. Okay, so again, you have one password that you have to remember, keeping things nice and easy for you. Now, once you're in Zoom, you can tweak your settings. You may want to allow your attendees to unmute. You may not want to allow your attendees to unmute. And things like that. You may want to double check to make sure that the microphone is working. You may want to make sure that your video is working, things like that. And then when you're ready to allow your attendees to come into the room with you, you then come up here and click Open Area. And once you have the area open and the room open, now your attendees no longer get that offline page. They simply get entered into Zoom, like you did when you came to this meeting, or like you did when you went to the virtual event on virtual events or any other event that's been hosted on this platform that you've experienced. So that's the main difference between the two. And best practices is to open the room first, start Zoom, get yourself comfortable, acclimated, and say, okay, I'm ready for attendees. Now open the area. So hopefully that helped.
Yep.
A little bit, but why do you need multiple rooms? Because you've clearly defined this as the idea of you can have infinite numbers of rooms. What is the point of having multiple rooms?
Great question, Martin. So multiple rooms are only useful in two scenarios. Well, one in it's one scenario, but with two key things. Number one, if you have an event that is over 500 or 1,000 people, depending on a couple of things. So it's only useful for really large events. That's number one. Number two, it's only useful if you have the ability to send a video and audio feed into multiple rooms, right? Into multiple meetings. So you have to have the hardware to be able to do that. It doesn't have to be as robust as what we have here at the Sage Studios, but similar to that, right? Can you take the video source from this one camera and give it to two ATEM minis or something along those lines, so that I can then be plugged into two MacBooks so that you can have two Zoom rooms running. And now you have doubled your attendance capacity. So we built Obvio initially, yes, with you guys in mind, but also with large scale events in mind, right? So this platform, you can use it, but it can also be used by people like Tony Robbins, who has, a studio that has the capability of hosting upwards of 75,000 attendees at it. We can use it here in our studio. Our studio is a little smaller than that. We can host upwards of about 15 to 20,000 attendees, or so on and so forth. So, yeah, or a book launch. So that's the reason why there's the ability to do multiple rooms. But I'll tell you, most of our users, most of our events are under 1,000 people, only a single room and a single area.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, because that was confusing me, because I could see you could do rules and send certain people to certain rooms based on a rule, which is geeky cool, but I'm like, why would I want to do that other than like having all the VIPs in a room so they can talk to each other versus the non-VIPs kind of thing, which, okay, that's kind of cool, but I was just missing something.
You're the one. Actually, what you said, the reason that the rules system exists is exactly what you just said. Right. So we have clients who do want to put VIPs in their own room. I personally don't like that particular strategy, but some people do. And or maybe they want to put. Yeah, exactly. If it's a really big event and it has multiple languages, you may want to split up your Spanish speaking and your French speaking and your English speaking people in different rooms. There's a number of reasons to potentially have those features. They tend to be reserved for larger scale events.
Which makes a lot of sense. And then you need to have the hardware to to kind of work that. So when you get to that place, is it like I talk to Muddy? Do we talk to you? Do we talk to Grant for some advice on how to think about that? Because I'm thinking,
I mean, you're actually
big,
in Leap,
but I want to plan a little harder and start
so
putting things in my vision board.
Martin, you're in Leap. So one of the previous tech labs, we actually went through how to connect up to 3 meetings.
Okay.
So the process and even some of the hardware that you could potentially use, like I said, you don't need to spend a gazillion dollars like we have here at this studio, or even have the all of the assets that Muddy and Grant had or have at their studios. It can be a little bit easier. So
yeah. So which tech lab? That wasn't the one we just did in November. So this is
no, it would have been one from a couple years ago. I'd have to go back and take a peek, but it's one from a couple years ago.
Okay, I can go check, because I'm kind of curious just to understand, because part of this is my events aren't there, but what I'm also doing is I've decided as a vision New Year's goal, whatever you want to call it, take over the universe, all that and above. I'm going to start doing this for my clients. We're going to push for virtual events. That's why I put inside of the comments in yesterday's thing that my it was the funniest thing. The client says, people don't attend virtual events. Nobody does that anymore. And I was like, yes, giggle. And then I was like, so you mean to tell me Tony Robbins isn't a real business and Dean Graziosi, and they didn't know that? But then their response was, well, our industry is special. That was the second response. So then I named two of their competitors that are doing this, and then they shut up. And so we're having a reconsideration of it. I know this is one of those that I know I'm going to win. It's not an if, it's a when. So March 7th, y'all wish me luck. I'm going for the kill on that. But their first event will be probably 250 people, so it's underneath the threshold. But the other clients, you have to think big quickly. I need to know where I need to start thinking of putting financial assets. So that advice, just so I can do my year planning and visioning, would be useful. So I'll go look and kind of see that, and I might conscript Muddy if Muddy's here. Muddy, you might be getting a call from me. Intent. Thank you.
Well, that's no problems, Martin. So there was a similar question from Miriam, was just asking, do we have people we could hire or recommend to help set up one-on-one teaching for Obvio? And so we keep talking about Muddy. Muddy is a great person you could talk to. There's a handful of people that could help in that, and I recommend it. We've talked about it, Miriam, before, about you sticking to your lane, understanding what's possible, and then not necessarily having to worry about how to make it all happen. And if you're in a position to be able to do that and have someone else worry about it, that's the key. And that's the thing, Blue, too, when you were talking about the tech lab and talking about how you could do up to 3 rooms with a pretty basic setup. I think we'd all still recommend that you don't tech your own show, and that you would still have someone that was just sort of managing that.
Well, and I think the reality is, for most of us, if let me tell you this, we did the virtual event on virtual events with 1 room. And we didn't need 2. I didn't need 3. We had, think about almost 600 people concurrently was our max. And 600 people is at the top end of how many people I like to have per room. But every time we have an opportunity to reduce the number of Zoom rooms that we're doing, we take it, because the less opportunity for error, the better. And every time you add complexity, while yes, it can be cool, you also add opportunity for things to break. So the less opportunity for things to break, the better, I think.
Totally agree. Yeah.
And then for those of you who are in Leap, I'll also just remind you guys, if Obvio is the question, come with specific questions on this call. It's not uncommon for us to do demos and to actually walk through some of the different features and pieces of the platform. And then also, if you joined Leap, remember, when you are ready to do your first event, we'll actually help you build your first dashboard. So there's that as well.
So back to one of those specific Obvio questions. Robin was asking, can we copy from one dashboard template and paste to another, or just duplicate the same template?
Just duplicate events.
Yeah, there's no need to elaborate on that, it seems.
I got nothing.
Okay. Kat was just saying, best timing for broadcasting emails for a weekend event that starts at 10 a.m. Pacific.
If I had an event that started at 10 a.m. Pacific, I would send an email the day before reminding them, hey, remember, your event is taking place tomorrow. If I was sending an email to an event that started on Saturday and I was sending it the day before, I would want to send that email on the Friday before 2 p.m. because people tend to check out on Friday afternoon. So, I would probably send it sometime between 11 and 2. Then morning of, I would probably send an email around 8 in the morning. And then I would send another one 30 minutes before the event and another one 15 minutes into the event.
Yeah, and all those can be scheduled ahead of time and you don't have to worry about it. Yeah.
Are we permitted to make that many broadcasts?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Linnell was asking, I want to use Obvio for a number of events, free workshops, virtual events, mastermind programs, monthly membership meetings. Some attendees will be attending multiple or all of the events. Would it be better to set up all on a single event so the Obvio sign-in is the same and users have permissions to populate the dashboard, sort of like you do for VIP access for some and not for others? Or would it be better to set up separate events?
I think you sort of addressed this answering
Kind of.
fulfillment, enrollment, free. So I think that answered my question.
You still could manage it. You could manage it all on one, but it would be messy and unnecessary. And so doing them
Don't do it.
separate events.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Yeah, don't do that. It's easier to have. It's way easier to have a dashboard for each event. Way easier. And not only that, but you can modify it and customize it to be like, I'll give you an example. The dashboard that we had for the webinar looked vastly different than the dashboard that we had for TVE. Right? The dashboard that we have for Leap looks vastly different than the dashboards that we had for TVE and for the webinar. And I like it that way. I like them to be their own unique property, if you will. And even if it's just the logo change, Linnell, right? Do a different dashboard for each. But remember, you can duplicate dashboards, right? Like if you come up with a design, you're like, oh, I really love this design. All that's changing is the event logo. Great, no problem. Duplicate the event, change out the logo, everything stays the same. Right? So you don't have to build every single one from scratch. Once you find a design that you're happy with, you can replicate it.
Cool. David is getting geeky about the Insta360, asking about it's a USB video class or UVC device, and asking about getting some adapter to adapt that to a Blackmagic A10 Mini. I would not recommend that. It's kind of you're going around a different way to getting a USB camera and trying to get it into hardware, and then you lose some of the software control and things like that. If you have a setup that includes an A10 Mini, then use HDMI cameras. And if you want a tiny little OBSPOT, a little PTZ, then you could use an OBSPOT. OBSPOT tail, I think it is, has HDMI out. There's a few different ones that you could get if you wanted a PTZ and have it all separate. That's what I would say. Yes, you can buy USB to HDMI adapters, but that's another couple $100. It's probably not necessary.
Yeah, I just thought we might want to address that since we've been talking about the camera. For people who have the A10, they might not realize that there would be a compatibility issue.
Fair enough. Yep. It's not an HDMI camera. It doesn't work natively with a Blackmagic A10 Mini setup. So it really is that camera is designed to just connect straight to your computer and not go through any switcher. Kat, did you want to say something there? Someone said something. Nope, you just unmuted. Cool. But Kat did have a question. For music video portion, do I need to adjust any Zoom settings? So the deal with Zoom is that there is the camera input, and then there's screen share, and they're the two separate. And generally what happens is a camera input is high frame rate and can be high resolution in the way that we have it set up. And screen share is generally prioritizing the resolution over the frame rate. So it's designed so that you can share your screen exactly how you see it. It goes over Zoom and they send it, but the frame rate might change because it's prioritizing full resolution, because generally what we're showing is slides or a demo of some software. It doesn't need to be high frame rate. So it can be a little bit choppy, and most of the time you wouldn't even notice that, but it's very sharp. And that's the way that the screen share works. So when it comes to sharing video, what there is a couple of options. One of those in the advanced section of screen share is to point to a video file and share it that way. And that is the best way of doing it. That'll optimize it for video, it'll share the sound, and it gives you control to be able to change or to scrub through if you need to a different part of the video. Unless you've got a separate setup where you can put your video running into your camera input. As we were just talking about, an ATEM Mini, a Blackmagic ATEM Mini, is seen to the computer like a webcam, but you can plug in other inputs to that. You could plug a computer into that and play a video full screen, and now that's coming into Zoom as full screen in the camera input. And so someone was saying that before. They were saying, oh, I've seen someone play videos within the camera input. And that's what we will generally do with our larger events, is we're not using screen share so that the screens are changing around for people. We're doing it all and we're producing it as a camera input into Zoom. So now when we do a screen share, we want to do a side-by-side or a picture-in-picture, we do all that separate and have it come in as a camera input. So bare bones basic way of doing it, Kat, is just to share screen, advanced, select a video file, share the video file, and it will come up like a screen share, but it's playing the video directly. That's the best way to do it, unless you have a bit more of a advanced production setup. There is an option, Kat, you're saying about optimize for video. So what that does is it changes the resolution of the output and increases the frame rate. And so it often for video you won't necessarily notice, but it is reducing the resolution, increasing the frame rate, and making that work for video. And I would still do it. I would still share the video file directly rather than sharing your screen of the video playing back.
Could I just clarify that with you for one moment?
Yes.
So normally when I share my screen, I go to the upper left cell and click on that. Do I still do that and have the video from a download on my computer already ready to be chosen?
So when you go into screen share and then advanced, you can share video, and and then it'll ask you what's the file that you want to share, which is different to sharing screen and then opening the video and then playing it. So it actually looks better as well to your attendees, because it'll open and start playing straight away. They're not seeing you mess around trying to find the right file and opening it and playing it and going full screen. They'll miss all of that. They'll just have the video playing directly. So that's the best way to play a video when you have no other setup. And other people would talk about, oh, you could use OBS, software. You could use all sorts of different software that Zoom would see as a camera input, and you could play it out that way. But the video sharing option in Zoom is a very good one. So just play around with it.
Okay, I just have one clarification. So
you said that before. You said you've already used up that one. No, yeah, off you go.
So I'm in settings and I've gone to video, and then where do I actually choose video?
Okay, it's not in settings.
Okay.
So in the screen share option,
Yes. Yeah.
when you go there, then you'll see basic and advanced. You go to
Mhm.
advanced, and
I
then you'll see
see.
video. When you
I
click
understand.
that, it'll then ask you, tell me the file that you want to share, and then it will open and start sharing that with everyone.
I've got it. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. All right. I am leaving very shortly, Blue, but we've nearly gotten through all the questions that were posted. David was just asking about an excellent feature of Obvio is a unique Magic Link participant login URL, which prevents unregistered individuals from attending your event. After a certain period of time after the event, video content may be transferred to an alternate hosting platform. Are there any video hosting platforms that function similarly to Leap Member Hub in providing secure access exclusively for registered program participants, but prevent others from accessing the program materials?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. The one we use is Searchy. SEARCHIE.io. And the thing I like about Searchy is you can actually automatically import video from Zoom, and specifically from Obvio, actually, into Searchy. So it works nicely. But our entire member platform is built on top of a feature called Searchy Hubs, which is just baked into their regular platform. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I'd look at that. There's a whole other option is using something like Vimeo. Vimeo you can lock down, so you could upload your videos to Vimeo, and then you could host them back on a dashboard, an Obvio dashboard, and you can lock down that those videos can only be played on the Obvio domain. They can't be accessed anywhere else. They can't be accessed on Vimeo.com. And they'll live for as long as you've got a Vimeo subscription. Same as long as you've got an Obvio subscription, your dashboard continues to work, and people could come back and watch that. So, Dr. Sally is asking 3 questions. My first Obvio event will be a one-day book launch. What template do you recommend, or does it matter for this type of event? Let's do these 3 questions. What do I need for a team? A, tech check. B, monitor chat. And 3, another person preparing the opt-in page, collecting money and using the CRM for emails. Is there any issue getting a third party's CRM connected to my event? I assume in the training this is explained.
Dr. Sally is taking full advantage of questions. It's like a 5-in-1. That's awesome. Okay,
Exactly.
so I'll start at the end. No problem with having your event connected to somebody else's CRM. Outside of just make sure that you have permission to do that, et cetera, as I'm sure you do. So no issues there. Part 2, what do you need from a team perspective? For a book launch, especially if you're going to go kind of like the free model, again, I would not do a tech check. I would keep things simple. So I don't think you need that. And I do think it's not a bad idea to have a room monitor or chat monitor, somebody who is on your team, who is in Zoom and is just kind of monitoring the chat for negative commentary, self-promotional commentary, inappropriate things. Those are, that I don't think that is a bad idea. And then next up, what do I recommend, or does it matter? I think the 2 simplest templates that have the biggest visual impact are the cards template and the Nifty template, the Nifty 50 template. I like those 2 personally for a book launch. I think they'd work really well.
Good work. I'm gonna jump out. Blue, you can see the question. You can see the questions.
Yeah, do I just click the little X when I'm done or the minus when I answer a question?
The X.
The X. Bye-bye question. All right.
You've got the con.
Oh, this is dangerous. All right. Next question. From Kat. What does it mean when main area shows 0? It means that you don't have any attendees currently online. So what I think you're talking about, Kat, is when you are at a page that kind of looks like, let me just make sure I share the right screen. Is that Google Chrome? I think I am. Okay, like this, right? And it says 0 next to all of them. That's because there's no attendees currently online in that event. If I were to go to the Obvio, like to the event that we're on right now, and take a look at that same page, you'll see that there's now 35 listed, right? So that gives you an attendance number of how many people are currently in that that area or that room.
You would have just heard, aha. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Bez, with the winning descriptor for questions for the day, posted a question about OBS.
Sure. You made me go and post it somewhere else, so
I mean,
I'm not used to
not really well. I mean, you didn't really post a question, Bez.
because I'm used to just raising my hand. So I know we've been talking about ATM minis and ATM this and that, but I'm just gonna go with OBS at least for my first one, and then after my first launch, use some of that money to invest maybe in an ATM, whatever.
Awesome.
But using OBS, are there any known issues I need to be aware of as it interfaces or works with Obvio?
No, not really.
Okay.
The only thing that I would say here's the only thing that I would say to you, right? Is video software switchers, which is what OBS is, it's what vMix is, it's what Wirecast is, it's what Ecamm is, right? There's a bunch of them. They are doing a lot on your computer. And I would recommend that you not have anything else running the day of your event. Shut down Dropbox, shut down Drive, shut down like anything that you have kind of sitting up in your or down in your tray if you're on Windows, up in your menu bar if you're on a Mac, and just keep things as clean as possible that day. And turn off your email, turn off your browser, like literally have turn off your fridge. Yeah, I mean seriously, just have as little plugged in or connected or operating as possible on that day, so that OBS has all the resources available to it that it could possibly need.
I was gonna use a PC that I have for Obvio, just so it doesn't have to. It's all along with it. Not Obvio, but OBS. Yeah.
Sure. So then the things that I would be thinking about if I was using a PC is making sure that you have a decent amount of RAM, making sure that you don't have like an Intel integrated video card is probably going to suck pretty bad.
Okay.
So little things like that. In an ideal world, you're working with a card or a system that has either an NVIDIA or a AMD video processor. Graphics card, integrated graphics card inside the computer, or if it's a PC, if it's a desktop, then an actual real card in it, or if it's a laptop, an integrated card from one of those companies. Yep.
And I've got some options there on borrowing my son's gaming beast, which I bought the graphics card for.
Yeah.
Cool. And then just one quick thing, use case. Can I share a use case for Obvio that I found?
Sure.
Or do you have a lot of other questions? Okay.
I have 2 other questions.
Okay, so real quick, you know, I'm involved in well, here in Georgia, the Latino caucus was sort of dormant, and we just are in the process of revitalizing it. And politics can get crazy, so Zoom links at the ready are dangerous. So I found that Avio has the magic link, and I'm going to push, hopefully, for just a general membership meeting to happen on Avio, and I'll let you know how it went. Hopefully, we don't have any trolls that bombed it, but I like the security part of it, because that's the biggest thing for Zoom is these shared links, and I don't like that. So
Yeah,
we'll see how it goes.
No, and that definitely is one of the reasons we love it as well, for sure. Okay, Jeff, can you use the Obvio dashboard to connect it to Ecamm? Okay, so you're kind of mixing two different technologies with that question, Jeff. So, can you use Ecamm with Obvio? Yes. But technically, you're not actually using Ecamm with Obvio. You're actually using Ecamm with Zoom, right? So remember, where Obvio stops and Zoom begins is the dashboard versus when you're in Zoom. And the dashboard and all of that stuff is all Obvio. It's all the stuff that we have created. And once you click on that button that takes you into Zoom, there's a connection between Obvio and Zoom, and we open up our license of Zoom, but now you're in Zoom itself. So most of the things that you can do with Zoom, if you just go out and get your own Zoom account, you can also do with the Obvio provided Zoom licenses for your event, including use Ecamm. So no problem. All right. Kat, if we're having a waiver, since we'll be recording, should I send the waiver URL or login URL? You should send the login URL. What the waiver URL is when somebody signs the waiver, you may from time to time get a request for a copy of the waiver. And if you send them that URL, that will provide your attendee with a copy or a link to download the waiver that they signed that includes their signature. That's what that waiver URL is. So that's only really used if it's a request, right? If somebody says, "Hey, can I get a copy of my waiver?" And I'll tell you, it's there, but it's rarely used. Okay, Martin, what does the start and end dates do for an event? Because I have repeated event on, event off and on over a month, I don't want to duplicate dashboards. Okay, so if you have a long-term event, so let's use Leap as an example, or even this particular event, right? This call that we're on right now. This call that we're on right now is what I would call a long form event, or a really, really long event. Our end date for this event is sometime in 2025, I think. We do the same thing for Leap. And that's because it's an event that takes place over an extended duration. Now, the start and end dates for an event give us here at Obvio a little bit of information about when events are taking place on the platform. It also defines when you have access to Zoom. So if your event is outside, like if the current date is outside of the event start and end date window, then you won't be able to start Zoom in that event. You'd have to change the dates for that event to include now to allow you to do that. So that's the main thing that it turns on and off inside the platform. Outside of that, it's informational for us. So we can take a look at our internal metrics and say, okay, I've got 10 events coming up this coming weekend, and we have like 35,000 people who are going to be on the platform. That's an important metric for us to know. And that's why that information is still there and still asked for. But Martin, in your case, if you're doing an extended event over the course of a month, just extend the duration. That's totally fine.
Thank you,
All
because I
right.
kind of didn't know what was going to happen with, I didn't know what that controls, because I don't want to do a dashboard for every single time. I just want to repeat and point them and set things once and kind of be done with it.
Yeah, no, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, to be honest with you, we even have a client who has an event that they do almost every week with different attendees. And rather than duplicate the event every single week, all they do is they go into the platform after this week's event ends, and they clear the attendee list and start again. You know, I don't personally love that. That's not something I would do, but you know, it's something you could do. 100%. All right, Kat, how can I erase points while testing to reset for the beginning of the event? Okay, great question. So when you're testing and you have the point system in place, you may wind up with an attendee who accidentally has a whole bunch of points. And it's going to be you because you were testing and you were taking a look, and you're going to show up on the dashboard. So an easy way to fix that is just go to the person that you would like to have less points. So let's say I want to take David Garrett's points away. You would go to their little cup here, the leaderboard points, and you can either clear their points, or you can add, or you can subtract points from individual users. So assuming you're only going to try and reset one or two people, that's the easiest way to do it.
Thanks so much.
You are welcome. All right, let me just go ahead and say done. Okay. I don't have any other questions in the queue. Does anybody have any other questions? Angela, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Blue. So I'm new, and I would say that up until now, I've been technologically maybe challenged a little bit. And so I'm loving how you teach, and it doesn't feel so scary. With that said, I rather pay for speed. So I'm in Life Mastery with Mary Morrissey's program, and I'm ready to start doing virtual events to bring in high ticket offers using your formula. For someone who's new to it, I have a computer, I have an office, and I have a website. That's basically it. Is there any resource that can help I can pay to get it done for me that you all would recommend? Because I want it to align with Obvio, and I'm like, well, I don't want to buy the wrong mic. I don't want to get the wrong TV. But if someone else knows how to help me get that done, my thinking is pay for that instead of trying to learn it all myself, since I'm starting literally from baby steps. Any thoughts about that? And if this is the wrong place, you can tell me, hey, you should ask that during this session. But I'm assuming this is for people who are trying to understand how to integrate into Avio, which is I plan virtual events here.
Awesome. So I would say to you that if it's questions around setting up your home studio, there's a few people inside of Leap that are really, you know, great. Actually, not just inside of Leap, but inside of the Obvio community that are great resources. You know, Muddy is increasingly getting busier and busier because we keep saying his name, but he's somebody who can absolutely support. Another gentleman by the name of Justin James does a really good job at things like that. I know every once in a while Grant gets into that as well. The other thing I would do if I was you on calls like this, I would look at people who have really nice setups and be like, huh, that's interesting. What do they've got going on? What do they have? Right? Like Ken Sky, that looks pretty awesome. Maybe he'd be willing to help. I'm not sure, but maybe. Maybe not. So, but that's what I would be doing if I was you on calls like this. The other option is just quite simply to post in the Leap Facebook group and say, this is what I'm looking for. Can anybody help? I will also say to you, there were some resources shared at TVE, which were, some of the things that I like. And we have been talking about putting together kind of a good, better, best kind of shopping list, if you will, along with some basics, because here's the interesting thing. Once you start buying equipment, things get complicated fast if you're not technical at all, right? And it is really easy to use your 10, 12-year-old MacBook and, just set up a light and go to town. The moment you start adding an external camera like the one I'm on, or, the ability to cut back and forth to graphics, or, the ability to play videos in a little bit of a more fancy way, things all of a sudden start to get complicated fast, and having a little bit of support is really valuable. Just having the shopping list only gets you so far. So yeah, I'd probably start with a couple people that I recommended, and take it from there.
Thank you
There's
very
also
much.
some
I
really great.
also wanted to
You're,
I wanted
sorry,
to
go
say
ahead.
that yesterday, you really had me almost falling off my chair with the with the goggles, right? That was worth just attending because it was so funny. I will never use those, but I could tell he really
Yeah,
enjoys the techie stuff. So
I really do, and I will tell you, I really enjoyed those things. I went home last night. I will tell you, when that thing was first released or first announced, I was kind of, and we're talking about the Apple Vision Pro for anybody who's wondering. I was like, I'm not going to buy that. First off, it's too expensive for what is essentially a toy right now. And then it released, and I started watching review videos, and I was like, oh, this is not good. I'm gonna wind up buying one. And it turns out I didn't just buy one, I actually bought two of them. One of them as a gift for somebody who did something really, really nice for us recently. So yeah, it was fun. I went home last night and watched a movie, though, I'll tell you that, all by myself with my goggles on like a 40-foot screen. It was fantastic. Yep. Yeah. Barry thinks I look like an idiot. She's not wrong. Oh man. All right. Martin, what's your question?
Just one last question about the GHL integration. So when you set it up and you're adding groups, it has a create this thing. And I know all your integrations have difference, but your group is a custom field. It seems to create the custom field when you say create new, but it doesn't create the tags. And I want to know, did I just need to go manually make them in GHL, or is that a bug? And I can show you on my screen if you'd like to see.
It sounds like a bug. So are you saying that when you click the create tag option, when you're connected to Go High Level, it's not actually creating the tag in High Level?
Nope. Yep, it's not.
All right, that sounds like a
I
bug.
literally just did this 15. I just did it 15 minutes ago twice, and I'm like, is that how it's supposed to work, or not? And I got
it is how it's supposed to work, but it sounds like that does sound like a bug. So
okay,
that's either something that that GHL has changed recently with their API, or it's something that has gotten broken in accidentally by the dev team. So I'll pass
Is a
that one.
temporary workaround for me just to go manually create the tag, or is it gonna
create the tag?
actually
Yeah,
work?
because creating the tag inside of Obvio is all it's doing is creating the tag inside of High Level. So if you just go create it in High Level, you'll then be able to search for it in Obvio.
Okay, do I need to undo what I made and then redo
Nope.
it, or is it just gonna work?
Nope. It's just going to work.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it should just work.
You're not engendering faith here, Blue. I'm just like
Well, I mean, listen, had you asked me 3 minutes ago if clicking create tag for Go High Level would work, I would have said yes, absolutely. But today now it's 3 minutes later and I have new information. So you know.
And I second what she said, that was incredibly entertaining. I was laughing my butt off. I actually think I almost fell out of my seat because I was like, what the? And then the best was Barry's reactions to you. She was so trying to be serious and just failed.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I know. You're welcome. See,
Martin,
and the more you guys talk about it, being in Leap, the easier it is for me to justify writing it off as a business expense. Okay, money.
Well, I was just going to point out quickly for Martin on the high level integration in particular, the link is the tag, the attendee created tag is generated by Obvio. It's a very specific tag that has to be used. And as a result, there's a copy button in Obvio to make sure that you copy it and get that tag exactly right when you create it in high level. So,
but I'm talking about the other three. So
okay.
the checked
Yeah,
in, the signed waiver,
created, the waiver signed, and the tech
even though
check,
I'm actually not going to use those, the only one I care about is the attendees created tag. The other two I'm just filling in because it needs it, and I might use it in the future.
It doesn't actually need it. Yeah, Martin, it doesn't actually need it. You don't have to use them.
Yeah, I'm just going to fill them up because the reality is I'm going to be doing multiple events and things in this sub account. So I'm very much a create it, set it, and I don't need to worry about it. It's done kind of thing rather than the, hey, did I do that thing? Did I forget to? Because when it comes to memory, I get file not found errors all the time from my brain. So I just don't want to try to go into the local RAM here. It doesn't, no.
I
That's
love
a computer
nerd jokes.
geeky joke for y'all.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Thank you, Martin.
David asked earlier about sending a USB webcam into an ATEM, and I thought I'd just take a 30-second to point out there is a device that will let you take a USB webcam and convert it to HDMI. The challenge and one of the ways I've seen this done with clients is, Logitech Brio used to be one of the better USB cameras, and they wanted that in their ATEM as like their behind the shoulder camera or something like that, one of their auxiliary cameras that they could cut to. So a device like this will allow you to do that. However, when you use it with something like an Insta360 Link, you lose a lot of the extra capabilities that camera has because it's not connected to the software anymore. It has, you don't have the Insta360 Link controller software, which gives you a lot of those abilities to move the camera and adjust the settings and things like that. So you lose some of those. There is a similar little PTZ camera by a company called OBSBot, OBSBOT, OBSBot. The nice thing about the OBSBot is you can get a remote control for it. And this little device allows you not only to plug in the USB camera, but to plug in the little fob for the remote control. So you still get the ability to kind of move the camera around when using it. So if having a little PTZ or USB webcam connected to the ATEM is something that's important, then I'd recommend a camera like this that has a separate remote control. So thanks.
Sweet. All right. Any other questions? Let me double check to see if any more questions have actually come in. Sorry. Nope, not yet. Okay.
I did see one question in chat. Jeff was asking about how you add gamification to buttons, and specifically, it looks like the the menu, the header, the navigation buttons like the home, speaker, sponsors.
Is Jeff still here? Yes, he is. Okay. Yeah. All right, great. Okay, so give me 1 second and let me show you. Is this the right one? There we go. Sorry, every time I go to share screen, I have to think to myself, am I sharing the right screen? Because I have too many screens open. All right, so, or too many windows. So first off, if you're talking about how to assign, what's it called? How to assign points to clicking on these particular items, that doesn't actually exist inside the platform. Okay. Now, inside of the gamification system, there are a couple of those pages that you can assign points for: visiting the leaderboard, visiting the speakers page, and visiting the sponsor page. We actually have on our task list to add visiting the FAQ page and visiting the Zoom backgrounds page. But for now, it's just those three. Now, with that being said, you can create an action called visiting FAQ page, or you can call it whatever you want. Click save. And then on your dashboard, you can create a button. Let's say this join the Facebook group was my something else. Let's just say it said FAQ, right? And instead of going to the Facebook group, it went to the FAQ page. And then what I could do is pick an action for points and select visiting the FAQ page. So if I did those things, now the action that is actually being rewarded technically is the clicking of the button, not the visiting of the page. That's technically what's happening, but the end result is exactly the same, right? So if you're okay creating buttons to send people to those various pages, then you can reward people with points for visiting those pages. Incidentally, the nice thing about the way it's working right now is I can create a button to go to my Facebook group. And if you click the button to go to the Facebook group, I can assign you points for having gone to the Facebook group, right? So the flexibility that it has, the way it's built currently, gives you access to be able to reward people for not just visiting pages within the dashboard, but also visiting pages externally, which I personally really like. So hopefully that answered Jeff's question. Did I come close, Jeff? Did that answer the question for you? Let me just put it in the chat if it did. Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, any other questions, or are we tapped
One
out?
quick question. So when we try to bring in guests, like I open a room, I get a Zoom link. Do I just give the guests that Zoom link for them to be?
No.
So where
No.
do guests come in? Like, how do I bring them in?
Great question.
They're just part of it.
Yeah, no, this is an awesome question. Okay, so actually this is really, really important for everybody to know. The way the standard setup for Obvio rooms will not allow people to join Zoom using the normal link that you would share inside of Zoom, right? So if I share my full screen and this is my Zoom meeting, and I click on this little button here and I click copy, right? Because I just want to copy that Zoom link. If I share that with other people, they won't be able to get into this meeting. And that's because the security features that Obvio has ties Zoom meetings to the dashboard. And unless you come in from the dashboard, it won't let you in. Now, with that being said, every once in a while, you may have a speaker or a guest that you would like to bring into the Zoom meeting without having them have to go through the dashboard. So the way you do that is you go to your main stage. In my case, it's main stage. You go to the room by clicking on the number 1 and you toggle on, it's going to be off by default. You toggle on this registration enabled URL and copy that link. Now it's going to be a long link, kind of like a Zoom link is. And when you click on it, it's going to open up a page that asks you for your first name, last name, and email address, and has a button to join the room. That is essentially, once they click join room, that's going to insert them into the room. It's going to by bypassing the event dashboard. And what that essentially is a Zoom room. It's a backdoor link. What we call them is backdoor links into Zoom. And I would just be cautious about who you share that with, because those are not gated, meaning anybody can get into Zoom using that link. Now, because we love options here at Obvio, and because we continue to improve, by default, they're not gated. If you go into the gear next to the registration URL, up at the top, there's a toggle. And if you turn this toggle on, then registration on this page is limited to existing attendees. What that does is it means that people who land here, if they click on first name, last name, and email address, but their email address is not an attendee, then they'll get an error message. So if you want to keep it secure, the secure way to do it, and admittedly, Martin, I will tell you quite transparently, we don't do this. Like when I'm running an event, I don't freak out about security as much as some people. I think it's important. I don't want it to be easy to get into Zoom, right? But this particular page, I'm just careful about who I give this link to, right? Because I'm not posting this link on Facebook. I'm giving it to trusted friends, to team members, to speakers who aren't going to share it with anybody, right? So they click on the link, they type in their first name, last name, and email address, and they come in. But if you do want it secure, you can limit it to registered attendees, and you can add your speaker's email address to your attendee list, and they'll get in. So
yeah, that makes sense. That would work for what Bez is trying to do with the public forum. He probably needs to do that security because he's worried about trolls and cray people coming in. But it's nice to know that this is
especially if he's going to share that URL with a lot of people. If he's going to keep that link relatively close guarded, like only share it with team members or something along those lines, then it matters less. But yes.
And so guests don't have to be Obvio team members. Guests are just this process. They come in, they get the thing. Now they come in as that, and then we're good. I like it.
You got it. Yeah, they do not need to be Obvio team members. That just complicates matters.
Was this thing you just said documented somewhere? Because I was kind of watching all the training and I don't remember seeing this, and that's why it was in my head.
Yeah,
but I've also remember the local RAM thing doesn't work, as I told you.
I do remember you saying that, yes, but I don't think it is documented. To be frank, I think the onboarding workshops didn't cover some of the more advanced features of Obvio, and I would qualify what we just shared with you as, those backdoor links aren't used all the time. They're not used by most people. Maybe because we don't document it.
Well, so if they're not used, how are people supposed to bring speakers in? Like
most people are just bringing them in through the dashboard.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
But personally, what I do is we use that link. I like that link feature quite a lot. So that's what we do.
Thank you. Yay!
You're welcome. All right. Well, guys, I thank you so much for sticking it out today. It's a long call, but some great questions. And for those of you who are just getting started, hopefully you're starting to get comfortable with some of the terminology that we're using and seeing some of the options that are available to you. And hopefully part of what we're talking about is triggering some ideas for how you can use Obvio, because you can definitely use it far beyond just your traditional 3-day event, which is one of the things I love about it. And hopefully you will too. So with that, I'm going to say I hope you guys have an amazing week. Remember, if you have questions between now and next Wednesday, the Facebook group is always at your disposal. The app itself has a little chat icon between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. And there's always somebody available to answer your questions. And you can also email us at help@obv.io, and a team member will get back to you within about 24 business hours. So plenty of options to get your questions answered. And I look forward to seeing all of the cool things you guys create with this amazing platform we've worked on. So thanks. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Thanks, Blue.